This is Nova Scotia.
I have a funny karma in the East Coast. Both my Italian ancestors who fled the World War and my Irish ancestors who fled the famine sailed to the colorful and quirky port city of Halifax, Nova Scotia. Built on one big hill with a citadel on top, it has a clock tower whose booming bells don't ring on time, and it's totally decked out with all manner of vibrant and expressive art, from the quaint folk stylings native to the Maritimes, statues immortalizing echoes of a complicated political past, contrasting a certain refinement, hints of virtuosity trying to push through a humble indie spirit. The boisterous nightlife, mostly contained to the radius around Argyle Street, is fueled by a shared love of drinking from East Coast natives and the students from the city's 2 universities. Naturally, the food culture here is very accommodating to the intoxicated 2 a.m. stumbler. I lived in Halifax for years, so every corner of the harbourfront city reminds me of some misadventure I had as a stupid kid in my 20s. But Halifax is also where I started my journey into adulthood. My first, quote, real job was as a personal trainer at a Good Life Fitness, and one guest who we had on our fitness podcast became a very close friend of mine. He just so happened to have been a trainer at that same gym back in the day, so naturally we had to go back and revisit our old digs.
Good place to call it.
Both of us started practicing functional fitness and moved away from most conventional lifting, but in the name of nostalgia and the sweet, sweet, incomparable feeling of a juicy pump, we broed out and did some curls for the girls. Because, I mean, what beats a pump, right? Now, the real reason we burned off all that glycogen and engorged our juicy guns with all those curls was so that we could use our functional gait mechanics to walk down to a cafe that we always go to when I'm in town with one very specific mission in mind.
All the carbs.
Pain au chocolat and every other pastry imaginable, all manner of creamy cakes, tarts, freshly baked focaccia. Pane e Cerco, Italian for bread and circus, is one of my favorite spots in the city. I absolutely love hanging out with Adrian because, like me, he puts a huge amount of effort and energy into health and fitness, but also isn't above drinking coffee out of tiny cups that make our arms look bigger, or indulging in a rich, swirling croissant deluxe stuffed to the brim with Nutella. It's not a requisite, but I tend to get along best with people who know how to chow down.
Did you not catch that in the video when I spotted your set? I spit right on my finger. Put that in there, man. Someone would be like, that fucking guy.
Between Halifax having the highest population of hipsters per capita in any Canadian city, as well as the universities pumping out frenetic students who anxiously need to fuel their caffeine addiction, the laws of supply and demand dictate that there are a lot of places to get coffee around here. Coffeeology Espresso on Dresden Row, however, stands out above the rest for the passion and precision that goes into the coffee making process. I had the privilege of talking to the owner, Kay Kim, about his story and how he makes coffee.
My name is Kay, and I'm from South Korea. We moved here almost 10 years ago, and I started this coffee shop 5 years ago called Coffeeology Espresso. I love coffee, I love this city. I really wanted to bring, like a different coffee culture. I do really like the pour-over coffee, which is like, hand manual brew, which wasn't really popular here. It takes more time, but ended up you can get a really nice clean cup, and literally you can explore so many different coffee beans. They're characteristics or so many nice flavors too. So I wanna just bring different coffee and better coffee as much as I can, so we can enjoy the more coffee. We have many nice local coffee roasters here, like a Laughing Whale, Have Fun, or Sign, or Eco Chemistry in New Brunswick. For the future coffee, I usually bring some from Montreal or Toronto, sometimes Vancouver, sometimes Europe, America, sometimes Korea, which is where I'm from. It's not just about the coffee. It's more like people, communication with people, or relationships with people. It's best way to meet new people and chat about what do you do, what do you like, right? So just getting know people is my favorite thing. Yeah,
Awesome.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much, man.
No problem.
And thus began a masterclass on how to make the perfect pour-over coffee. A specially selected Rwandan origin locally roasted red bourbon coffee bean with notes of blackberry, rose, jasmine, and wine gummies weighed out to the gram for precise flavor profile.
some 19 degrees.
Every step in the process is measured and calculated, from the volume and temperature of the water to the amount that you're allowed to pour on the ground beans at once. Kay's passion presents itself in his patience and presence with the process. He is in no rush whatsoever.
Takes some time, huh? The total amount of water is like 300 grams, and I pour like 50 grams the water each, like 3 or 4 times.
Slow pour after slow pour. I'm really starting to wonder what this coffee is going to taste like.
It's kind of standard ratio, so 1 to 15 or sometimes 1 to 16, but depends on the beans. Figuring out the best ratio is the one of the job.
They say that patience is a virtue, and I'm going to see if this cup of coffee proves that point.
So I'm usually an espresso boy, but when the master tells you to get a certain kind of coffee, you listen, right? It's so smooth. It's got all the roasted, earthy flavors of coffee without any of the acidity or any of the bite in the back of your tongue that you normally get. It's almost too smooth. Wow. Yeah, I'm usually an espresso boy, but when you get a recommendation, you take it.
Coffeeology was my favorite spot for a coffee, but now I'm on the hunt for the best croissant. I was given 3 recommendations, starting with Luke's Small Goods in the North End, a little bakery and a shop with super friendly upbeat service, and a bunch of other goodies that truly gave the small town Scotian vibe justice. Where else than on the East Coast are you going to get canned cockles next to your croissants? The butter croissant was pristine, uniform, glossy, kind of contrasting the drip coffee in the 90s Bart Simpson's mug. Flake factor is on point. It's got a little bit of give with that butter. Yeah, she's good.
I get it.
I had to go on a bit of a journey for my next pastry popping adventure. There's a cafe across the harbor in a city called Dartmouth, or as some people colloquially call it, the Dark Side. Dartmouth is actually a pretty nice city, but it has a local reputation of almost being Halifax's evil twin in a way. Whether or not that's true is a matter of personal opinion. 2 If by Sea Cafe is a nod to an American poet, Henry Longfellow, in his poem Paul Revere's Ride. The poem takes place on the cusp of the American Revolution, and Paul Revere uses a secret signal to warn civilians and local militia about how the British were advancing towards their attack. He would light 1 lantern if they were coming by land, and 2 if by sea. The cafe is known for their enormous croissants that don't even fit on the plate. When I first heard about them, there was a rumor that each one contained an entire stick of butter. Honestly, I don't know if that's a warning or an incentive. Due to their sheer size, they didn't have that same flaky pull-apart factor that most croissants do. It was more dense and chewy, kind of like a soft, buttery bread with a crumbly pastry crust. It wasn't like any I was used to, and it was massive, but I still ate it. The last stop on my croissant crusade is a bit of a hole in the wall, just insofar as I literally walked past it when trying to find it. Once inside, though, I was pulled in by a rainbow display of creative macarons and picture-perfect cannelle. Naturally, I had to keep my croissant company as I sampled the amazing pastry offerings of Le French Fix. It feels really trite to use the word rustic to describe this croissant, but it literally gave me my French fix. Each flaky, buttery layer reminding me of a cafe in the small town outside of Toulouse that I was staying at when I was 15.
This is a croissant.
Okay, the hunt is over. This is the croissant I've been looking for the whole time. Without further ado, let's do the rankings. 3rd place is 2 If by Sea. The huge croissants were great, but not competition worthy. Luke's Small Goods could have taken an easy first win with its delicious flaky pastry if it wasn't for Le French Fix creating, literally, the perfect croissant. The East Coast is obviously more about seafood than pastries, whether wine and butter-soaked mussels, access to fresh fish making your sushi taste that much better, or the holy grail, the euphoric and slightly erotic joy of eating out of a fresh, shucked East Coast oyster.
Oh my god.
No, literally there's nothing like it. The freshness and quality is why I can never order seafood in my landlocked home in Alberta. It just doesn't compare. Halifax has amazing food, but with my personal history and family here, it's always been more about who I get to share the meals with conversations and smiles between bites make all the food taste that much better. I mean, what's the point of having organic, locally sourced bone marrow if you don't have an organic, locally sourced bro to share it with? Both of my actual brothers live in Halifax. I'm the only heathen that took a pilgrimage away from the coast to live in the mountains. I'd been telling my youngest brother Dave for ages that when I finally visited, I'd come do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with him at the Halifax BJJ Society, a place he'd been going now for years. Now I'm a pretty strong dude, and I think there's a subconscious belief that you can handle your baby brother, but...
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
David reminded me that skill and practice overrides the natural hierarchical order of being the elder brother. We had a lot of fun, even if he absolutely schooled me, and he made it up to me with an absolutely phenomenal slow-cooked brisket with mashed potatoes. My brothers and I don't get to see each other very often. Life has taken us each on very different paths, and we all live our own lives in our own unique ways. It feels really hard living so many provinces away, and I think about them all the time. But despite the infrequency of time spent together, there's a common bond of fraternal love that has always been omnipresent in my life. We always feel that at the kitchen table. There's no party like a Nova Scotian kitchen party there, bud. Guitars strewn about the living room ready to be played, people stomping along to your song so hard you gotta make sure your drink doesn't fall off the table, and an unmatched spirit of camaraderie as you share a drink with your buddy's cousin's girlfriend's uncle. My friend Jesse Patrick is about to take off with his bandmate Tyler Daniels to play music on a cruise ship for half the year. So naturally, we had to rally the troops for a proper send-off, fueled by a shared love of music and old sea shanties.
Damn them all. I was told we cruise the seas for American gold. We fire no guns, shed no tears. I'm a broken man on a Halifax pier, the last to bear its privateers.
At the end of a long night of drinking on the East Coast, there's only one logical choice for the food that you get to soak up all the alcohol. A hot, greasy, sweet sauce-soaked, aluminum-wrapped donair, generously introduced to us by the prominent Lebanese community and adopted by the East Coasters as their official go-to food, especially between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m.
Right, so you can't go to Halifax without eating a donair.
And take them rings off first.
It's messy.
Look at the steam coming off that.
That is a hot mess.
Cheers, bro.
Cheers, man.
And when your table has a puddle of grease, you know it's good. It ain't sleazy if it ain't greasy, you know? You got some on your jacket.
Woo! It's an absolute disaster of a food, but nothing beats it.
And just think, when I met you, you were a vegan, and here you are eating a donair.
God, don't remind me.
Local hip-hop artists have written songs and filmed music videos about this hot, sweet, messy delight, and it's become the most appropriately iconic way to end a night and my time in Halifax. A 3-hour drive outside of the city is a small town called Pugwash. It has some more interesting things about it other than eliciting images of cute, sudsy puppies, though. Pugwash is known for holding peace conferences where world leaders used to meet to discuss how to reduce the dangers of armed conflicts. But what I know this town for is being where my grandfather lives. At 89 years old, he's still sharp and wise as ever. Growing up, he used to give me Grampy Talks, where he'd impart life lessons, and even now, I got to learn from him on this visit.
What do you think constitutes a good life? What do you think people should focus on?
Well, I really believe that the most important thing in life is to love and be loved. You know, it's not necessarily a partner, but by some people in the world. You know, your family mostly, and yeah, that's what I think is important. Learning is of major importance to people. Whether they realize it or not, it's a lifelong process. Whether you do it formally or informally, it doesn't matter. You have to keep learning. And like the dinosaurs, when you stop learning, you're going to die. Either you'll die intellectually or physically, or both.
I'm finishing my trip by heading 3 hours in the other direction from the city now, off to the island of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, where my mom and her husband Neil both live. They own this beautiful, idyllic, picture-perfect property on a country road in a town called Port Hood. The pace here is quiet, relaxed, simple, down to earth. The opposite of all the chaos that I'd just been flying through as I traipsed about Montreal and Halifax in search of food, fun, friends, and fuckery. Now, I'm the type of person who sometimes has a hard time slowing down. I always have a project on the go. My calendar is stuffed to the brim every day of the week. I intentionally keep myself busy as to maximize how full I can keep my human experience, either with productivity, personal development, or recreation. Cape Breton is a unique off switch for me though. I can take in the scenery, listen to the birds chirp, and revel in the fact that I don't get any cell phone service at all. That being said, there is always work to do on the property. Neil is the handiest handyman I've ever met, fully stocked with every tractor or tool you could ever need. I let them know that they should have no qualms putting the young buck to work while I stayed there. After all, there has to be some perks to having kids. With not a whole lot going on in the local area, you tend to find your own ways to entertain yourself. It's not uncommon, for example, for mom to rip around on a golf cart, and when you're bombing down the hill in the back seat, it's actually a blast. Now guys, you didn't think I was going to go through a whole video about Nova Scotia without talking about lobster, did you? I'm almost ashamed to say it, but despite having lived here for the better part of my adult life, I'd never eaten a lobster. Frankly, I thought they looked like repugnant sea cockroaches. Their gnarly whiskers and spider-like creepy crawly legs repelled me thoroughly from the idea of ever eating them. Ugh, like, how do you look at that and think, yes, I will eat that? But since avoiding crustacean outright conflicted with the recent view of myself as a gastronomic explorer, I decided it was finally time to face my fear and have a proper Nova Scotian lobster cookout.
Lobster. Oh, there's dinner.
All right.
While Mom cooked up a batch of biscuits in the kitchen, Neil set up a pot with salted water and just a pinch of sugar to boil the lobsters in. In the last few years, some countries have banned boiling lobsters alive, requiring you to knock them out or sever their heads before you toss them in the pot. Scientists disagree whether or not arthropods actually feel pain, but that's beyond the point in rural Cape Breton. They've been tossing lobsters into the pot since time immemorial, and so in they go to meet their unfortunate fate until they turn that bright crimson red, signifying they are indeed ready to be eaten.
Beautiful. Lobster.
Lobsters are unwieldy looking creatures, and eating them seemed complicated. I needed Mom to give me the lowdown on how to tackle how I can crack open this delectable sea cockroach.
So, this is how I do it.
Make the leg off.
Take those off first. And then you do this over the bowl because there's going to be some water in there. You take one in one hand, one in the other, and pull this way. So, and then, that's a good sign. That means they're full. And then, this should release some water. See how the water comes out?
Whoa!
Pull this piece down and pull that out. And the tail on the other, again, do it over here. Twist. And it separates the tail from the body. Or a real lobster eater then pulls this apart. There's a little piece of meat right there we don't want to waste. And this, well, they call this lobster butter, but it's actually tamale. It's like the liver. I like it. This is fancy schmancy. This is the easy way. You just stick right in here and cut that side, one cut this side, and twist. And there she blows. These are called your knuckles. And I just go down. I just cut all the way one side, and then down the other. And then when you pop it open, there's all the meat. And your tail down the back. You can do this without these, by the way. You can just go crack, crack, and it'll open. There's a little thing about the tail. Tail, you take and you pull back, and there's his hooch, basically. You just remove that. Goodbye. And that's it. And throw that in there and then get at her. And everybody's got a different piece of lobster that's their favorite.
Gotcha.
Here you go.
First bite of lobster ever.
Okay.
When you pull the other one out.
It's pretty damn good.
There's a reason we eat it.
Okay, frankly, it was a lot better than I expected. I don't think I liked it enough to say I was obsessed the same way that some East Coasters are, but anything is good with enough garlic butter. Nova Scotia to me is like my favorite ex. We could never get back together, it just wouldn't work, but we do always have fun when we meet up, and it will always have a special place in my heart as something that changed my life. As the tides rise and fall, and as I ride the waves of life, I'll always find a reason to come back and anchor down in Nova Scotia. At least, for a visit.